everybody. Welcome to Stale Roses podcast. This podcast is created for women by women. And I have a little special someone here that wants to tell everybody a little message. Do you want to welcome everybody to the show? Say welcome to the show.
Welcome to the show.
And thank you for listening.
Thank you for listening.
Okay, there you go. And that was my little co-host for the summer series. Thank you all for hanging in there with me this summer. So I saw this quote that said, in quotations, it says, "I would die for my child." And that's accurate, right? Like who here who has kids wouldn't say something to that effect? You always hear parents saying that. I would take a bullet for my child. I would walk on broken glass, the gamut. But the thought starter here is, but would you live for them? What does that mean exactly? So for the first 5 or 6 years of my kids' lives, I was of that mindset. Everything was for them. I'm sacrificing everything for them. I will put my whole self aside. I'll put my health aside. I'll put my sanity aside. Everything is for them. And I don't regret that at all, because it was what I felt was needed at the moment. They needed all of me, and I could not also take care of me in that same moment. There's a lot of people that don't do it that way. And honestly, probably better for you mentally, because I physically and mentally really took a pretty big hit in those early years. And then when I started to think about the living for that moment, that was actually the transitional moment, pivotal moment for me when my kids were about 5 and 6. And it started to kind of percolate in my head that I'm their example. They watch me and their father, and that's their example of how they're going to be when they grow up. So let that sink in for a minute. Because we get wrapped up in articles online. You get wrapped up on seeing stuff on social media about mom stuff and, hashtag mom wine club, or you see you get wrapped up in the, what are they supposed to be eating? What are they supposed to be reading? How much screen time are they supposed to have? It's incredibly overwhelming. There's loads and loads and loads of things out there that moms should be doing this. Let's boil that all out and really down to the core. You're going to have to lead by example. Now, this isn't just applicable to having kids. This is also something that I apply to my professional life as well. So if you're a professional listening to this, think outside the box here. You lead by example. Now, when you're talking about children, it does run deeper in terms of having to change things. Because when I thought of leading by example, when I first found myself in a leadership position, a true leadership position that I had teams of people assigned to me, I had this policy I used to call "no man left behind." And the reason I called it that was because I had always felt the burn of being, the last man standing in the office back when I worked in offices, and I would be there until the wee hours collating papers or whatever it was at the time that I was working on. And then when things switched virtual, I would always be online by myself in the middle of the night. If there was an urgent report, urgent submission, urgent whatever it was, I was there by myself for the most part. And I always said to myself that when I got into a leadership position, I would change that. I'm not going to be one of these managers or one of these people that has her team working late and while I sign off and log off for the night. Being a leader is a huge amount of responsibility, not because you're accountable for, finances or reports. It's not because you're accountable for the bottom line, which is pressure. The reason why a leadership position has so much responsibility is because once you take on that position, it's not just you and your own timesheet and your own mental health and your own workload that you're responsible for. You are responsible for all these other people. I apply that to my professional life as well as my home life, because to me, when you're leading, you have to show the example. You have to be the person that stands there and says, I am going to stick around while you work on this task that you need to stick to. And I'm going to ping you and just let you know I'm here. And if you have questions, I'm here for you. Because that's what a leader does. A leader supports. A leader does not walk away and pass the buck. A leader supports. So that applies professionally and it applies personally. And when you look at the application to your children, well, how am I going to be a leader to my children? Like, think about it like that. How am I leading by example here? If I tell my kids they are going to eat organic, healthy vegetables, or if I'm telling my kids, you have to make sure that, you're having a well-balanced diet, but on the side, I'm not eating a well-balanced diet, or on the side, they see me, snacking all day. Like, that's the example. They're going to pick up the example. They're going to hear your words, but they're going to pick up the example. That's really what's going to resonate with them is I saw my mom doing this all the time. I'm going to do it. And so communication and, communication with your kids is key, but like the example is critical. So case in point, when I had that pivotal moment, when my kids were about 5 and 6 years old, and I had, the first part of their lives was totally sacrificed. My life was sacrificed for them. I came out of that unhealthy and mentally like not well and just overworked and burnt out, and a change was sorely needed. And I did. I made massive shifts. It took lots of time. And I think that's the other thing that, people think that a change is going to be overnight, or you think that, I'm going to make this change today on Monday and, that's it. It's good. It's carried through for the rest of my life. It takes work. So the real thing to think about here is like, you know what, I'm going to make small changes here. So when thinking about it in terms of your kids, for example, I happen to curse a little bit more than I should. And I say bad words. I'm getting a nod from my daughter on the side over here. She's agreeing with me. Yes, they don't need to know the words. Thank you. So I do. I do. And so I'm trying to get a handle on that because they tell me now, they're like, Mommy, you really got to stop saying these bad things. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I do. So, that's like a good, like simple example that I'm trying to get a hold on. Eating habits, healthy eating habits. That's a big one in our household. I am not great at making sure that I eat during the daytime. So I've been doing, making sure I have protein shakes, and I make sure the kids understand, like, this is a healthy shake. This is something that Mommy does. So that way I, if I'm a little short on time, I make sure I have protein shakes. Like, there's things that you can do so that your kids can see that you are leading a healthier, whatever lifestyle. It doesn't have to be healthy. That's not really the soapbox I'm trying to stand on. The point is that you want to live your life for your kids, showing them a better way. Now, I'm sure that everyone listening to this and hearing my voice can think back on their childhood to traumatic moments or times where you were like, this happened, it really affected me. This is your time. This is your moment to break whatever cycle it was that was done to you and to make it better for your kid. Like, really think about that. This is your moment as a parent to be able to say, like, you know what, I really didn't like it how my parents handled X, Y, and Z situation. I'm going to do better for my guys. And you have the power now to do this. So instead of saying like, oh yeah, I would sacrifice my life for my kids, but then like, doing no other parts, like really think about that. How can you live your life in the best way possible to give your kids this example of letting them see this is the best way possible? And I mean, we all have our vices. We all have bad habits. Like, it is what it is. We're human beings, right? Like, no one's perfect all the time. The twins picked up my sweet tooth. Like, like it is what it is. But we can all do better. We can all do these things better. We can all try harder. And I know it's exhausting. Believe me, as I record this, I'm already tired. But it's really just thinking of it with that lens. Like, yeah, I would die for my kid, but will I live for them? And how will I show them? Even with this podcast, I think I might have shared it on a prior episode where I took like a 4 or 5 week break from recording and doing anything with the podcast. I didn't do any editing, recording. I had campaigned out, my last spring series episodes that I had in my stock. And all I had to do really was like, I had my product launch, which you guys know about, and you know it's there. And I actually think it's ready now at this point. I just have to click the button. So there's been things I've been working on in the background, and I took this huge break just to see, like, do I still want to do this? Which is okay. And so I took this break to say, like, do I still want to do this? Do I still want a podcast? And the thing here is that my kids saw me enjoying podcasting so much, and they heard me doing it so much. When I stopped doing it, my son pointed it out, and he was like, what happened? Like, you don't podcast anymore? That was really cool. And that was like a moment where I was like, wow, like they were paying attention. They did see what I was doing, and they are watching me for an example. My daughters happen to think it's cool. Like, it is cool. Like, I think this is awesome. And I actually really very much enjoy it. So that little hiatus that I took helped reinvigorate me, And there you go. Like, that's another thing here. That's another example of like maintaining a balance. And I explained to my son, like, I took a little break. Mommy took like a little vacation, and now I'm back at it. Like, lead them by example. Professionally, lead people by example. If you've been in toxic workplaces, or you've had people treat you like garbage, you don't have to go ahead and turn around and treat people like that. Treat people authentically. Look at people and highlight their skills and help them really surpass their goals, because that's really what is going to elevate you as a person, as a professional. And as a parent, it's the same thing. It's literally the same thing. Really think through that. Like, there's so many dynamics professionally that you can pull through and apply to your kids. One of the things that I had thought about doing recently, because my kids are getting older, they're very sharp children. And because they're getting older, they're starting to ask to do things on their own. And or not asked to do things on their own, rather, but they'll say, like, mommy, can I do X, Y, and Z? And I'm always like, no, I don't have time for that right now. I can't deal with that. And my son said to me the other day, he was like, mommy, I could just do it myself. Like, I don't need you to do it with me. I just want to know, is this okay? And so it made me pause for a minute, because what I'm going to start doing now, because they're older, and I have to get my mind to shift out of the fact that they need me to sit next to them, because they don't. Now I'm going to say, like, if they ask me to do something, before I say no, I'm going to ask them to present their case. Tell me why you think you can do this right now by yourself. Present me your case. And if it's viable, you can do it. And that's how I'm going to talk to them. That's literally those words that I just used here as an example. That's how I'm going to talk to them. I always like to do that to them, because I'm like, you know what? They need to really start to think through critical thinking. I want them to use their frontal lobe. Like, let's get these guys, let's get this generation of children thinking outside the box. Let's get them thinking now. Let's make them into a better society than what we have right now. And that starts at home. All of that work starts at home. It's amazing the amount of examples we get from home, and then we pull it through into school and work and dating, the whole thing. You get it at home first, and then you leave the house and bring it out there. So think really hard about what is happening at home as the example, and how your little people are going out there in the world. And for all the professionals that are listening to this that don't have kids, again, apply it to your job. Apply all this to your job. Lead by example. And the simplest core that I have used to death: you treat people how you want to be treated. Do you want somebody dumping work in your lap at 4:30? No, you don't. That's messed up. To be perfectly honest, that's messed up. Anytime that happens, unless you know it's coming, like, there should always be a plan. There should never really be a moment that something gets dumped in your lap at 4:30. I don't care who the client is. Unless you're on retainer and being paid to be on call all the time, there is never a reason for that. Like, you could always plan ahead as much. You can plan as much as possible and have people in place to deal with stuff like that. Nothing has to happen that way. So really think through, professionally, personally, how you're managing things. Are you leading by example? Are you living for these people? Yeah, you might sacrifice for them, but are you living for them? How are you living? How are you doing it? So just some thought starters from me. I am grateful for all of you. Really appreciate everyone listening. I do ask, and when you have a minute, if you could just click the review button, leave me some stars. I would greatly appreciate it. Leave a review if you can. I would love to hear from you. I got this new great feature where you can message me directly through the podcast, which I think is pretty cool. So I'm just waiting for one of you to click that link so you can message me. And I'll see you on the next episode. I hope you enjoyed this one. It's a little bit of a thought starter there. And you know what? Take care, and thank you so much for listening.